Alrighty, I know it's been a hot minute. It's always been a hot minute. For a while there, I could not get any of my devices to charge. I don't know what the deal was. I bought a new battery pack, and it's... None of these packs are the greatest. I feel like we should have better technology in this day and age. But that kind of rant is for my channel, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That's not the right name. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That's the name. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That's where that kind of rant belongs. So let's just get back into it without further ado. This is ER, emotional reading. Because I get emotional. And we are on the Transcendent series. Book 4 in the Transcendent series. Called Dissident. Dun 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 dun. Hi, baby. Mwah. My puppos. My puppy dog. Oh, you can't see him. Oh, but you can see the WD-40 can. Oh, well. My fluff. My little fluffy butt. Dissident by Lisa Beeson. Chapter 5. Gosh, all of a sudden I feel like I can't do it. Little Senna stood with the dignity and poise the daughter of the Magiri should present, as she watched her mother leave so soon after arriving at the temple. Malu did not turn back as she proceeded down the corridors towards the public quarters with Ubrim, even though Senna knew that she wanted to. With the sages, Razura, and Brannon looking on, they both had to play their roles with grace. No matter how much Senna wanted to run crying after her mother and beg her not to leave, she was determined not to shame them in that way. A Majira is a beacon for her people, Senna thought to herself, remembering her Malu's words to help her stay strong in front of others. A Majira shows courage in the face of fear and tribulation. A Majira does not falter. A Majira does not cry. Senna stood stoic and steadfast until Malu and Ubrim were out of sight. Then, swallowing back her tears, she turned to face the uncle who had been left behind. Ronan towered over her. The top of her head did not even crest the height of his waist. He embodied the strength and stark impassiveness of a son of the Majira, born into the title of Magra. He was bound to protect the Majira bloodline. He glowered down at her. Senna could tell he was not pleased with Malu's command to stay behind with her. From the hard lines of his face to the rigidness of his posture, everything about him screamed acrimony. Shocked by such unwarranted animosity, Senna tried to search his eyes for intent, but he would not look directly into her eyes. It was as though their ironness offended him. Senna knew that her mixture of Ayan and Dazan features were shocking at first, but no one at the temple ever had such an aversion to them before. They usually had the opposite effect. She also knew of the deep-seated distrust and antipathy of the Dazans held for the Ayans, stemming from the Great Galactic War. But that had nothing... Pardon the interruption. Cat decided to make a run for it, and the dogs decided to make her run for it. She also knew of the deep-seated distrust and antipathy that Dyson held for the Ayans, stemming from the Great Galactic War. But that had nothing to do with her. She was just a child, with no more control over her parentage than anyone else. Senna couldn't stop herself from asking, Why are you angry with me, Savant? Using the informal word in his and Malu's dialect for beloved uncle, hoping that he would see her as his niece and not just a strange child he had been burdened with. They were akin, after all. They shared the blood of the mother. His eyes locked with hers, unnerved by her use of the familial title. I am not angry with you, he answered with guarded sternness. Finally able to read his intent, she saw that it was the truth. His anger was not directed at her. He was angry with Malu. She saw that beyond the anger was the fear she had felt in him when they had first arrived. He saw her as a threat. A threat to what, she had no idea. Malu had told her to show her uncles that they had nothing to fear from her. But why should that be her responsibility? They were the highborn Magra soldiers. Why was it up to her, a small child, to alleviate them of their fears? It made no sense to her. Sure, her conception was illegal, but her parents truly loved each other, and no one knew of her existence except for those at the temple. As long as the high sages granted her asylum, she was under the protection of the temple's grant of neutrality. She was no threat to anyone. Then she saw it. In the moment before he glanced away from her intense scrutiny, the disgust. He thought she was an abomination. The realization was like a physical strike to her heart. The only family she has known, besides her parents, rejected her right to exist. Her chest constricted, the breath from her lungs, as tears threatened to flood her eyes. She was distantly aware of Razura saying something to her, but she sifted away before she shamed herself in front of everyone. Though she loved moving like her Owen's people, the ability to sift tired her immensely. She only sifted long enough to escape Ranan's sight, then ran normally the rest of the way to the temple's meditation garden, effortlessly navigating the corridors and eluding any who might see her tears and try to stop her. As soon as she entered the vast garden space, Senna sensed that it was empty except for Rook, sleeping peacefully in his hiding place, making her way swiftly around the curved stone pathways, meandering through the fertile rings of concentrically tiered meditation wells. She headed straight for the giant hollow tree. It grew at the bottom of the center meditation well. Forgoing the stairs to save energy, she jumped down from tier to tier, trying not to trample the fragrant plants in the sunken gardens. Once she reached the tree, it was hard for her fatigued body to climb up to the place where the trunk divided, forming a natural cradle. It was her favorite place to go when she wanted to be alone. Beams of sunlight refracted through the prismatic crystalline leaves, creating shimmering rainbows that danced all around her with the rhythm of the breeze, forcing her shaky muscles to grasp, push, and pull herself up. She finally made it to the cradle and gave herself over to the fatigue, eager for a break from the heartache. When she woke some time later, she found Rook's warm, smooth body wrapped around her, with his head resting on her shoulder, his sleepy breaths puffing against her cheek. She hadn't meant for her need to call him out from his burrow under the wayward bush. Now that he was here, however, she was glad for his company. She had come to love him greatly, much to Razura's consternation. She constantly felt the need to remind Senna not to stunt its natural development with her attachment to him, that they hadn't taken him in to be a pet. They had only saved him so that he would survive to fend for himself. Senna thought back to when Brooke had first hatched and had been able to fit in her hands. Razura had chosen his name. It meant the reach of the night wind in her dialect. for his coloring was dark, and he was practically soundless when he moved. She had sewn secret inner pockets in their clothing so they could take turns keeping his little body warm and secure against them as he grew. Now he was longer than Senna was tall. Her heart gave a painful squeeze of remorse at the thought of letting him go out on his own. She knew it would be soon, and she would miss him terribly, but she understood that he deserved to be free and live as he naturally would in the wild. Her stomach let out an angry growl, loud enough to elicit a sympathetic response from Rook in his sleep. With a quiet giggle, Senna kissed the top of his smooth head before she carefully extricated herself from his embrace. She wasn't surprised to sense Rosura in the garden. She was using Niskatan, so it was hard for Senna to find her at first. But then she saw the murky outline of her Shazah in the tall grasses on the top tier of a nearby meditation well. Senna decided to use Niskatan also, attuning the frequency of her Shazah with that of the hollow tree, finding solace with its serene ancient rhythms. She also didn't want to be caught taking one of the manna fruit from its branches. The fruit was only supposed to be used for dire medical emergencies, due to its potent healing and rejuvenating properties. However, Senna's stomach was cramping painfully with emptiness, and she didn't see the harm in taking one of the smallest ones, just this once. The branches of the enormous tree were abundant with the precious fruit. One tiny fruit shouldn't be missed. Scrambling out onto one of the large, sturdy branches, she reached out to pluck the smallest of the spongy fruits she could find, sitting down on the branch and letting her little legs dangle freely. She eagerly bit into the juicy white orb. Sweet nectar dripped down her chin and onto her fingers. It was so delicious that she could understand why they had to limit access to the supply. If they didn't, it would all be gone in a matter of moments. As soon as she swallowed, she could feel an effervescence spread throughout her body. She finished the fruit in a couple eager bites, feeling guilty but completely rejuvenated and more satiated than she had ever had in her life. She couldn't remember ever having anything more delectable. Even in the in-between with her parents, they were always trying to one-up each other with their creations, pushing themselves to greater and greater feats. Licking the last sticky remnants from her fingers and around her mouth, she felt the blood bond even before recognizing Vranen's presence enter the garden. Through the clear crystalline leaves of the tree, she spied him under one of the surrounding arches, scanning the lush meditation wells with his fierce gaze. Senna didn't bother moving from her perch on the branch. She could tell that he only knew she was in the garden because of the blood bond. While using Niskatan, even if he did look her way, his gaze would pass over her as if she was part of the tree. "Child!" Ronan shouted in common speech, causing Senna to wince at the harsh loudness. "I know you are here. Reveal yourself." His speech and his movements were quick, opposed to the slower rhythms of the hollow tree. If the commotion Ronan was making wouldn't undoubtedly call the unwanted attention of the sages, she would have laughed at the absurdity of it. The meditation garden was a place of reference and quiet reflection for the sages and their acolytes. The acoustics engineered in such a way as to amplify the ambient sounds of the surrounding forest, and the soothing susurrations of the waterfalls pouring from the lake of the plateau. A whisper could be heard throughout the whole garden, so a shout would be heard throughout the surrounding temple. She gave a nervous glance towards Rook. They had chosen the garden for him to hide in so he could hunt the pests at night and sleep during the day without being disturbed. She was relieved that the raucous noise made him only stir a moment and nothing more. She turned back in time to see Rosura rise from the tall grasses, abandoning using Niskatan. "Calm yourself and let the child be," she demanded in a rapid, low tone as she swiftly marched towards the large Dissident soldier. You have upset her enough for one day. He hid his surprise at her sudden appearance behind a mask of indifference. I have done nothing to her, he insisted, lowering the volume of his voice to match hers, as he proceeded down the winding stone path. If you knew her as I do, you would think otherwise, she retorted as she moved to cut off his progress towards Senna's well. This does not concern you, Zanahi, he said, moving closer to where he felt Senna was in the garden. Without giving away Senna's location, Rosura deftly positioned herself between him and the well with the hollow tree. Everything about that child has been my concern since the moment she was put in my care as a babe. She is mine to guide and protect. You are unneeded here. If that were true, my sister would not have had me stay. I am the child's guardian now. She must learn to respect my authority and not run off and disappear without my consent. He gazed down at Rosura with the haughty disdain of a highborn. He made a quick, dismissive gesture for her to move out of his way, expecting her to submit to his authority as well. Undaunted, Rosura squared her shoulders and stood her ground. I am not subservient to you, Magra, she spat out, making the title sound like an insult instead of a status of honor. She flared her nostrils as if his scent offended her. The Zanari could differentiate the scent of certain emotions, and she obviously didn't approve of Ronan's. I am a proud Zanahari warrior, baptized by blood. Your title does not intimidate me. My people shed the yoke of your race's authority long ago, when we chose to leave Ameria. There are no self-appointed higher races here. None was granted the status of a neutral territory. Chose to leave? Your race was round up and banished to this moon when we grew tired of your barbarous ways. Do not rewrite history with the lies you tell yourselves, he scoffed. Frankly, I cannot understand why my sister would trust leaving a child, he balked, unwilling to speak the true word he meant to say, with one of such a volatile race. Knowing Rosura as she did, Senna could see the amount of self-restraint she was using to keep her voice low and calm, and not tear Varanen apart. Rosura was fiercely prideful of her race and heritage, and did not tolerate disrespect. You are the one who lies to himself, she ground out. Your people destroyed our ancestral lands, then forced us to abandon them to make room for the barbarians of your own race. The Zanahari that chose to leave allowed themselves to be round up and taken to none. You well know that they would not have been found otherwise. Her hand swiped her cloak aside to reveal the dagger at her hip, her battle stance ready. And I will gladly show you just how volatile I can be if you continue to disrespect my people, she said, her voice cold with menace. Varanen smirked in response to the threat. I would like to see you try, Zanahari. The Dissident are considered the higher race for a reason. He stepped back, ready to begin the motions to summon the power of his Shaza. Malu had said that the lethal art was called Tarunai. Rosura grabbed her dagger with an exaggerated flourish, preparing to attack before he could concentrate his energy. Senna abandoned Niskatan, allowing Rosura and Varanen to slow down and give her a chance to stop the impeding violence. Rosura jabbed forward with the dagger in a feint, testing his reflexes and the weaknesses in his defense. Varanen pivoted easily away with a laugh of derision, obviously underestimating Rosura's fighting skills. However, Senna knew that Rosura's next move would draw blood. Stop! Senna shouted in panic. She climbed down to a lower branch so she could be seen clearly. I am here! Please stop! They both halted their movements and turned to stare at the tree, their expressions turning from surprise to horror. Senna realized her mistake when she heard the savage hiss behind her. Rook was on the branch above her, in full aggressive stance. He must have awakened during the argument, and her panic shouting had made him think that she was in danger. Rook saw Ronan to be the threat, focusing all his ire towards the stranger. Ronan immediately ran past Razura towards the edge of the hollow tree's meditation well. "Move away, child!" he shouted, switching the focus of his movements towards Rook. Senna quickly realized that the exchange between Ronan and Razura had been nothing more than ego and bluster, for the sweeping movements of his arms and quick gestures of his hands were sharper and dramatically more combative. Rook sensed the threat of the luminescent energy forming around Ronan's hands. He began baring and gnashing his sharp teeth in warning. Both the man and the Leviathan were prepared to destroy each other, trying to protect Senna from the other. Memories of teeth, claws, and tearing flesh bombarded Senna's senses. She glanced to Razura in appeal. Razura gave a quick tilt of her head in understanding, before she ran over and used her shoulder to knock Ronan into his side, effectively breaking his concentration and dissipating the luminescent energy. Senna reached up to the higher branch and managed to place her fingertips on one of Rook's back feet. Rook was a highly intelligent creature, but because they could not communicate verbally, Senna had learned to send him visual images laced with emotions. She immediately joined their Shazai and channeled feelings of calmness and safety into him. When Rook began to relax his posture, she conveyed to him that Ronan was not a threat. Rook shot back with thoughts of the harsh sounds and threatening gestures he witnessed Ronan making towards them. Ignoring Ronan's protests, Senna climbed up onto the same branch as Rook, so she could place her forehead against the top of his head, making the connection stronger. She then tried to convey that Ronan's heart and mind were confused by fear, but ultimately he wanted what was best for her. Ronan would not harm them. She would make sure of it. Ronan was her family, so Rook shouldn't harm him either. Rook still did not want to trust Ronan. His instinct was to attack, bite, and rip into Ronan's flesh to protect his vlik, or family unit. He began drooling in anticipation of the taste of it. However, his desire to please Senna overrode his impulse to attack. Rook sat back on his haunches in grudging capitulation, though he was still hyper-aware of Ronan's every movement. "Sin," Razura said in a quiet, gentle tone, causing Senna to turn away from Rook. "It is time, Pakyu. He can no longer stay inside the temple grounds." No matter the pain it caused in her heart, Senna knew that it was the truth. It was too dangerous for him to stay. "Yes, Shatu," she whispered softly. Tears spilled from her eyes as she placed her head against his once more. With a heavy and reluctant heart, she showed him images of Razura taking him down to the low forest. She showed him hunting and living with other Leviathans, lacing the images with feelings of liberation, acceptance, and a sense of belonging to a new Vlik. He shot back with an image of him, Razura, and Senna, laced with affection and stubbornness. They were his Vlik. They should not part ways. Senna showed him images of her and Razura visiting him as he thrived in the forest where he belonged. She showed him her memory of how brave and beautiful his mother was. Then she let him know that he would always be family. But he was grown now, and he had to go out on his own. Razura made a clicking sound to call him to her. Senna gave him one last image of him going to Razura, laced with love, before breaking the connection. He made a disgruntled grunt of protest before climbing down the tree and making his way over to Razura. He clacked his knife-like teeth together at Ronan in warning as he passed by. Then he carefully climbed up onto Razura's back and shoulders, wrapping himself around her like a second cloak. Thanks to the garden's acoustics, as Senna climbed down from the tree, she heard Razura say to Ronan in a hushed tone, "She is far nobler and intelligent than any child I have ever known. Master your reactions to fear and uncertainty before you force her to do something we will all regret." She turned away and stealthily took off before he could respond. There seemed to be something Razura and Ronan were hiding from her, a word they were reluctant to say. It made Senna feel uneasy in the pit of her stomach. Razura had never kept anything from her before. At least she had thought that was so. After watching Razura leave, Ronan turned to look down at Senna as she approached. His eyes were full of confusion, fear, and cautious fascination. He wanted to know how she was able to have control over such a savage creature. He didn't understand that it wasn't control, it was affection, respect, and consideration. She realized then that his problem was possibly not with her. It was his issues over control. His fear took over when he didn't feel in complete control of a situation. It made some sense to her now. His life was dedicated to keeping the bloodline safe and being in control of himself and those around him. Helped him do the job he was born to do. However, she still did not understand why he feared her so much. Senna didn't bother wiping away the tears still streaming down her face. She was tired of being strong. In the span of a day, she'd had to deal with the departure of both her mother and her best friend. Ronan could deal with her tears. "I am ready to submit to your guidance, Savon. But please, help me understand why you fear me." She held up her little hand to prevent him from objecting. "Do not deny it. I can read it in your eyes." His brow furrowed as he contemplated her. "Do you not know what you are?" She would not let her uncle's misguided assessment of her determine her worth. Her parents taught her to never be ashamed of who and what she was. She was a mix of two great races. She was her parents' precious miracle child. She was not an abomination. Senna jutted her chin and squared her shoulders, as she had seen Razura do earlier. There was no shame in who and what she was. "I am the daughter of Tale Sem Utir, Majera of Greater Emuria, and Lorien Jurek, a lancer for the Talsian sovereign. I am the granddaughter of Bazan Sem Yula, the Daisen consul in Esseret, and Kataya Sem Utir, Majera of Greater Emuria. By the grace of the high sages, I am a student living in the Athosite temple of Nan. I strive to live true to the rhythms of the great song and to better the quality of life of those around me. Anything else is inconsequential to the measure of my worth and the caliber of my character." Ronan continued to glower down at her, though she caught a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "If that is so, then it should not matter what I think or feel about you." "You are my mother's half-brother. We are akin. What you think and feel will always matter to me, but it does not determine my worth." He looked away from her eyes. "You do not speak like any other young children." Senna had never been around any other young children to compare herself to. New acolytes devoted themselves to the temple right before they reached maturity, or shortly after. All she knew was that she spoke as the sages did. Instead of explaining this, she simply said, "Because there is no other young child like me." The barest hint of amusement curled at the corner of his mouth. "You are a fearless little thing, aren't you?" "Not fearless, Savon. Just determined." Despite his best efforts, his face broke into a small, indulgent smile. In spite of your strangeness, I can see my sister in you. She used to be a precocious little thing, too. Senna's heart lightened, knowing that in his eyes she had graduated from an abomination to his sister's strange-looking offspring. It was a small concession, but she accepted it gladly and smiled. It was progress. She also loved the fact that he thought she was like Malu. Sage Owen swept into the garden with his long stride and flowing saffron robes. "There you are, Senna," he said in common speech, appearing relieved to have found her. He then turned to Vronin in deference. "I beg forgiveness for the interruption, but it is past time for her lessons." Preference for punctuality and strict routine were as particular to his people as their willowy, elongated frames, due to the low gravity of their home planet. Senna made to go to him, but then caught herself and looked up to Vronin for his permission to end the conversation. She was disappointed to see that his demeanor had become guarded once again. He looked towards Sage Onrun, then back down at Senna, and tilted his head in assent. She smiled up at him in gratitude, then ran towards her beloved tutor. She practically flew down the stone path with the extra energy she had attained from consuming the manna fruit. When she came near to Sage Onrun, she reached up to take his pale, elongated hand with her tiny, darker, golden one, and he led her out of the garden. She felt his fondness for her wrap around her heart like a soothing poultice, and she was grateful for his peaceful countenance after so much turmoil. As they walked, she couldn't help thinking about Rook. Silently, her heart pleaded to the great song to help him adjust quickly to his new life. She also couldn't help wondering if she would ever convince Vronin to teach her how to harness the energy of her Shaza to use Tarunai. Though she knew it to be deadly, it was also amazing and beautiful to behold. Everything in its time, she thought to herself, a phrase the sages intoned whenever she became impatient. Everything in its time. And that was the end of chapter 5. Felt a bit sloppy, but that's what happens when I'm gone for so long in between doing this. Maybe I should not be gone so long, and it wouldn't be as sloppy. What a concept. But that was chapter 5. More backstory into Ariana Grande. No, Ariana Reyes. Kira. Ari. Senna. I think that's all of her names so far, at least. The Catalyst, if you want to count that as a name. Alrighty, that was Dissident, Chapter 5, Book 4 in the Transcendent series by Lisa Beeson. And I'll see you next time. Peace.